Our 38 Packard Coupe restoration is really coming along nicely, but there's still plenty of work ahead to get this car fully sorted. So today, we dig into the steering system. Join me for that on Classic Car Restoration. Welcome to Classic Car Restoration. I'm your host, Mark Lambert. Now, I've just returned from another test drive on our 38 Packard Coupe, and the good news is all the systems we've sorted so far are in good shape. This thing runs nice and cool, about 160 degrees, and it's got good snappy acceleration, the way I like it, and it stops nice and straight. So our cooling system, our fuel and ignition, and our brake systems are all fully sorted. Now the steering system is kind of the weak link in the chain. In fact, the other systems feel so good that the steering feels worse than ever. I've got to manage this thing all over the road to just keep it on the road. So today, that's what we're going to do, the steering system. Now first, I want you to check your steering gearbox play, and to do that, it's very simple. Just reach in and shake the steering wheel and look at the total amount of movement before you get a response from that front tire. Now that must be 2 or 3 inches, and all we want is about 1/4 of an inch. If it's any more, you've got to deal with it. Because think about this, the steering is your whole communication with your car and the road. Now, to properly adjust this steering gearbox, we've got to get the pitman arm disconnected from the rest of the linkage. Don't let anybody tell you you can do this adjustment with the weight of the car on the ground, because there's just too much force on this gearbox. We've got to isolate it from the rest of the system. Now, to do that, we're going to have to pull this cotter pin here. Take our little cotter pin pulling tool, and just like that. Now, let's get this cup off. There we go. And it just unscrews, and this is a ball and socket joint. There's half the socket there, the other half's in there, and you can see the ball. So let's pop this linkage off. Sometimes it takes a little force. There it goes. Now look at the play in that. Of course, that's because we're off center, but there's still a lot of play there. Now, before we adjust this, we've got to make sure we've got enough lubrication in this gearbox. So let's take a 5/8, take the cap off. Okay, I can see my teeth down there, so I know we're low on fluid, because I should see fluid right at the bottom of this filler neck. Fill the steering box with heavy gear lube. This stuff really clings well to the gears. Good. Now, to properly adjust the steering box, we've got to exactly center the steering wheel and the lever and the shaft. So I'll show you how to do that. We're going to take this piece of chalk and we're going to mark our steering wheel and take it from one lock to the other and count it. Keep track of the rotations, and then split it right in half and put our steering wheel there, and then we'll know we're in that center position. There's our mark. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2/3. See, we started over here. Here's 1/3, and there's the second third. Let's go back 2 and 1/3. 1, 2, and right there. Now, this thing was pretty well set, because look at our horn button. The emblem, the Packard emblem on our horn button, is straight up and down. Now we can adjust this. To do that, we take a 3/4 wrench and a big screwdriver, and I'm going to unlock this lock nut. I'm going to hold this main screw right in place. Now I'm going to grab this pitman arm and shake it back and forth. Hear the play? There's a lot of play in it. I'm going to very gently take this nut down. Now what that's doing internally is driving those gears together. The teeth drive together, so any slack that's there will be taken up. Now I don't want to go too far, I just want to take it to 0 clearance. Now, if I've done this right, I'll be able to move this Pitman arm, and of course you'll see the steering wheel spin, and it should be, oh yeah, it's just really nice and smooth. All right, that's what I want to feel, a nice smooth action under gentle pressure. And for more details on this adjustment, you can get those on our website at DIYnetwork.com. Now, we've got our gearbox adjusted, so the next step is to check our linkage, and I think we've got some problems there too. So we're going to do that when we come back on Classic Car Restoration. When we come back, we'll remove the steering crank and see what we're up against. All right, we're back on Classic Car Restoration. We're going to check out this steering linkage. Keller, hand me that pry bar. Have you seen this thing?
That bad, huh?
It's been shot for 30 years. Oh, man. All right. Tie rod ends look good, though. So it's the center steering pivot. All right. To pull this thing, we need to get rid of the bumper, the radiator, and the harmonic dampener, and then we can drop this pin straight out. So let's do it. Now that we've got the bumper and radiator off, I want you to look at something with me. Look at this repair job. This is the way you repair an old wheelbarrow or something. That's just got a cotter pin holding that whole pin together. Now, it should look like this. A castellated nut, and the cotter pin's just there to hold the nut. So this thing is riding on this little cotter pin. Keller, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have been out cowboying this thing. All right, let's pull this pin out. Man, oh man. No excuse for this kind of stuff. All right. Let's take a hammer and tap it out. Need a little drift. Good. All right. Now I can give it a good whack. There it is. Look at that bad boy. Man, he's been worn out for a long time. All right, now we can shake this out. Good. Now the next thing we need to do is pull our outer tie rods, and I'll show you how to do that. Now I want to show you how to properly release a tie rod end. First you pull the cotter pin, and then the castellated nut. There we go. Now here's the trick. I don't want to see anybody beating these threads. Here, all you're going to do is damage the tie rod end, then you'll have to replace it. This is a cone-shaped fit, so we're going to strike right here, and it'll just massage that cone and pop that tie rod end out. Right here. See that? Now we'll do the same thing to the other side, and then we're free, and we can snake this whole assembly out the front. All right, now that we've got the steering linkage free, we're ready to fish it out from underneath the car. All right, Keller, I'm going to come your way for just a bit.
Okay.
And let me get the center pivot free. Good, there we go. A little more. All right, now back my way.
Turn it
Yours
down.
free.
There you go.
Uh-oh, hold it. All right, you got it?
I got it.
All right, now we're making some real progress. So next we go to the bench, we clean that up, and we see what we have. And we'll do that when we come back on Classic Car Restoration. Next, we'll clean and rebuild the steering crank arm assembly. Welcome back to Classic Car Restoration. Now we've removed our steering linkage from our 38 Packard Coupe. Let me show you the old parts. This is what our steering system was riding on. It's a wonder it didn't feel worse than it did. Petrified bearings and an old worn out pin. This is the way that pin should look. Look how much material is missing from that. All right. Now, back in the day, if you needed those parts, you go to your friendly Packard dealership and you'd pick up this bearing. This is an old-fashioned sort of bicycle fork bearing. And back in the day, this felt washer was there to keep the lubrication in. But unfortunately, about all it did was seal the water in and guarantee it would rust out. This is a brand new center pivot arm. If you were that bad off, you needed that, you could pick that up at the dealership also. This is what we want to end up with. No play and a very, very nice even swing. Good and tight. All right, let's take ours apart. Clean it up a little bit. Always protect your eyes when you're doing any kind of hammering. Now we'll flip this whole assembly around. And I want to chuck this up in my vise right here. Now I'm just going to catch the edge of this old bearing with my punch. See it there? Now let's clean this up. All right, let me show you this modern bearing. This takes the place of that old bicycle style bearing. This is sealed for life, and we'll put a little bit of grease on it so I can take it down on these shoulders. And right in here, I'm just going to gently tap that. Okay, that's the top one. Now we'll start the bottom one. Use fresh grease to lubricate the tie rod ends. All right, let's take them all the way down in our vise. Good. Here we go. Okay, you see them walk in there? Now the bottom one's going in. All right, just snug. This is important. Don't force it. Just seat those bearings right there. Let's chuck it up this way. Now, on the car, this pin goes right up through the bottom, and it's held by the castellated nut. That's what we were missing before. And then the nut is held with the cotter pin. Now, the other thing I want to show you is how I was testing those tie rod ends when I was underneath. I want to put some pressure this way and also up and down. These are just little simple ball-and-socket joints, and they need to be tight with no play whatsoever, because that's going to transmit into loose steering. Those feel really good. And let's grease those while we're off the car, but always clean the grease fittings so you're not pumping that road dirt and old grease into the joint. Now we'll just take a couple of strokes on this until the new grease comes out, and you'll see it. Right there. Right there. This will come out up here. There it is, see it? All right, guys, that is what restoration work is all about. It's the little detail stuff that make the car really feel good in addition to looking good. So we've got this rebuilt, and we're ready to go put it back on the car. And we'll do that when we come back. When we come back, we'll install our newly serviced crank arm. Welcome back to Classic Car Restoration. We're ready to reload our steering linkage back into our 38 Packard Coupe because we've just rebuilt this item. Packard calls it a center steering arm, but you'll hear it called a bell crank or a center link. They all do the same thing. The input comes in through the steering box and moves this drag link, and then it moves this center crank back and forth, sends the energy back out, and it changes the spindle direction. If there's any up and down movement in this, like we had before, it's just lost motion and you feel it at play at the steering wheel. So this fits right up in here. And the way we centralize it in there is with these shims, top and bottom. Keller, let's go ahead and load this. I'm going to put this side through first, right through this torque strut. There we go.
A little bit. Bring it back to me now.
Now, I'm going to load this bottom shim first. That's in. And then we'll fit our steering crank. Now I'm going to line the whole thing up with this punch. Okay, now I'm ready for the top shim. Okay, now let's fit the pin. Now I want to slide this up gently so I don't bind anything. Good, there it is. Is that coming straight up through?
Come on, it's coming right through there, just right.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to seat it.
Great, good.
All right, that's seated. Now we need that castellated nut, and then we'll take it down with our wrench. There's our nut. I'm going to reach in there and feel that. Oh yeah, that's looking really good. I just want to avoid any kind of bind here. We just want to take this down snugly, check our motion. Good, no binds. All right, I'm going to put about 20 pounds of pressure on that. Let's see where we are on our cotter pin. All right, this is a lucky one. I can fit that cotter pin. Once you get that pin in, you just bend this back, and that'll hold it in the way it should be. Now, I want to show you how to install this tie rod end onto this spindle arm. This is simple stuff, but like with a lot of things, it's all in the details. This is just a little washer, and it drops down. And once I pump that full of grease, it works as kind of a water shield. Now, before I put that up in there, and see that's a tapered pin, I want to do the next guy a favor and put some anti-seize on it. Then it will come off easily if we ever have to take it off. Right there. All around. Straight up in. I like to give it a little tap to seat it. Then we put our castellated nut on. I'm going to pull that on down to make my castellation match right there. There we go, right in there. Right there. Pump fresh grease into the tie rod end to create a good weather seal. And that's it, real simple. Just makes the weather seal by the use of the grease. Now, we're ready to reconnect our pitman arm onto our drag link. And to do that, we need a little grease there too. So before I drop it on, I'm going to pump some grease right there. Add fresh grease and replace the dust cap to keep the grease in and seal the road dirt out. Now we're ready to swing our drag link over on top, right there. Good. I'm going to pull that toward me. Now goes our threaded cap. This threads right in. Now we just take it all the way down. Then install the cotter pin and secure it. All right, now let's test it. Let's go ahead and center our wheel. Good. Now check for any lost motion. Oh, that's nice. Look at that. An immediate response. So look at all the improvement we've had on our car so far. Right there, just beautiful. Now look at what we've done today. This is real restoration work. This is the stuff I love almost as much as driving the car. We went ahead and replaced our steering crank bearings. That's about a $150 kit, and then we spent a few dollars on fluids. What did we save? Well, this job would be $1,500 to $2,000 in a restoration shop. Why? Because the front end has to come all the way off. Now, while the front end's off, we'll go ahead and do one last thing. We'll replace the timing chain. And then we can put the clip back onto our 38 coupe, and it will look like a Packard again. We'll do all that on the next Classic Car Restoration, so join us.